This is Davion Williams Charles, and today I will be predicting the NBA playoffs. Our first matchup is the number one seeded team in the Eastern Conference, the Celtics, versus the Miami Heat, the 8th seed. Boston has been the best team in the NBA this past season, and they have a dynamic duo with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. The Miami Heat has Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, but the Miami Heat have been struggling this past year, and also Jimmy's hurt, and he's gonna be out for the first couple games. So I have Boston taking the series over Miami. Our second matchup is for the Eastern Conference is the New York Knicks versus the Philadelphia 76ers. Philly has Joel Embiid coming off of an injury, and he's been playing like an MVP caliber player. New York also has Jalen Brunson carrying their team, and their second best player, Julius Randle, is injured. I believe that Philly will upset the New York Knicks and beat them. Our third matchup in the East is the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Indiana Pacers. Milwaukee's led by Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard, while Indiana's led by Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam. Giannis is going to be out for the first couple games, but I still think Milwaukee's going to be able to beat the Pacers. And our last matchup in the East is the Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic have been a quite shocking team led by Paolo Banchero, but Orlando doesn't have as much firepower as Cleveland does, with Cleveland having Jalen. Our last matchup in the East is the Cleveland Cavaliers, the 4th seed, versus the number 5th seed, the Orlando Magic. Orlando's led by Paolo Banchero, and Cleveland is led by Donovan Mitchell. They're both pretty well-balanced team on both offense and defense, but I really believe that Cleveland will be able to beat the Magic, and the Magic are just too young, and I don't think that they can get it done. All right. Our first matchup in the Western Conference is the number 1 seed OKC Thunder versus the number 8th seed New Orleans Pelicans. Oklahoma City has been the best team in the West, and I feel like that won't change, and I have them going pretty far in the playoffs. So I think that OKC is going to beat the Pelicans this first round. Our second matchup is the number 2 seeded Denver Nuggets versus the number 7 seeded Los Angeles Lakers. The Nuggets are coming off of the NBA championship from last year, and although they're playing good, I think that the Lakers are going to be able to upset the Nuggets and beat them this round. Our third matchup in the West is the Minnesota Timberwolves, the 3 seed, versus the Phoenix Suns, the 6 seed. We're in Minnesota, so we have to go with our hometown team, Minnesota. The Timberwolves have been playing great basketball this season, and the Phoenix Suns have been playing okay basketball. So I think that Minnesota's going to be able to beat the star-studded Phoenix Suns. And our last matchup in the West is the 4-seeded Clippers versus the 5-seeded Mavericks. Luka hasn't lost a series to Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic and the Mavericks have not lost a series against the Los Angeles Clippers in the past 3 years. So, and I don't think this is going to change. I have Luka and the Mavericks winning against the Clippers. Now, for the second round of the playoffs, we have in the West the 1st-seeded Thunder versus the 5th-seeded Mavericks. I feel like OKC is the second best team in the NBA, and I feel like they're going to show this here and beat the Mavericks pretty good. So I have OKC winning against the Mavericks. And our second matchup in the Western Conference is the 3-seeded Timberwolves versus the 7-seeded Los Angeles Lakers. Minnesota is one of the best young teams in the league, and they're really going to show it, even though playing against a veteran team as the Lakers with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I think that Anthony Edwards will go off this series and win Minnesota and bring Minnesota to the Western Conference Finals. In the Eastern Conference, we have the Boston Celtics versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. Boston is the best team in the NBA by far, and I don't think they're going to lose to Cleveland, so this is pretty easy. Give me the Boston Celtics. Our next matchup in the East is the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Philadelphia 76ers, and Philly has gone through some things this season, but Milwaukee has one of the best duos in the league with Damian Lillard and Giannis, and I feel like Giannis is going to have a crazy series against Joel Embiid. So I have the Milwaukee Bucks beating the Philadelphia 76ers and moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals. For the Eastern Conference Finals, we have the Boston Celtics versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Boston has been the best team in the NBA so far, but Milwaukee has beat Boston multiple times this season. I think this series is going to go down to the last game in the last minutes, but I have the Boston Celtics finally going back to the finals. And in the West, we have the number 1 seeded OKC Thunder versus the number 3 seeded Minnesota Timberwolves. Minnesota has been a good team this season, and so has OKC, but I don't think Minnesota's ready for it, and OKC is going to go to the finals. And for the NBA Finals, I have the Boston Celtics winning it all and bringing home their 18th NBA Finals in history.